Welcome to Mastering Fundraising, a podcast for nonprofit leaders of all titles and all experience levels. Mastering fundraising endeavors to cover the most important fundraising topics with the goal of helping the audience reach their full potential as fundraisers. This podcast will share stories, tips, and guidance on the most important elements of fundraising. If you want to earn an advanced degree in fundraising, this is the podcast for you. Mastering Fundraising is a collaboration between Fulcrum Nonprofit Leadership and the 5-Tool Fundraiser, two leaders in providing relevant and expert content to fundraisers and nonprofit leaders. Without further delay, let's jump into the current episode. Please join me in welcoming your host for today, Chris Looney.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Today on Mastering Fundraising, we're joined by John Scola, one of the most respected voices in the field of ethical fundraising. John has spent decades leading advancement teams in higher education, healthcare, and the broader nonprofit sector. And he currently serves as Senior VP of Advancement for the Boys and Girls Clubs of the Valley in Phoenix, Arizona, and is also chair of the Global Ethics Committee for the Association of Fundraising Professionals. His leadership in shaping the standards that guide our profession makes him uniquely equipped to help us explore one of the most critical topics in philanthropy, ethics. So we'll talk about how ethical principles guide decisions large and small, how to navigate gray areas when donor intent and mission collide, and how to build a culture where integrity is not just expected, but celebrated. So thanks for joining me today, John. I really appreciate it.
It's always good to be with you, Chris, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about a topic that means so much to us and to our profession.
It does. It means a lot to most of the folks that I've ever worked with. It is, in fact, one of the top priorities of their professional career to do fundraising in an ethical manner. And that's why I'm so excited to share this topic with the audience, many of whom who are not professional fundraisers, but interested in the profession. So before we jump into ethics as the main topic, let's start with a little background on you. I always like to explore people's leadership journey. So if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about your own leadership journey in the nonprofit space.
Well, I like to say that I came to this field by accident, although it's probably more by divine providence. Back in the day when I started my career out of school, I answered an ad in what was called a newspaper. I think you might have heard of them. And the ad was, I thought the ad was for a position in banking. And when I showed up to what I thought was an interview for that job, I found myself face to face with the executive director of a local nonprofit who saw potential in this liberal arts student who stood before them. And the rest is history. I stumbled into it, unlike a lot of people nowadays who study and want to be in the nonprofit sector. I was drawn into it by, as I said, accident or divine providence, take your pick.
Yeah, I love it. Well, tell me a few of the leadership roles that you've had in your career. I know we first got to know each other in an entirely different city, and now you're in Phoenix, and you seem to have always sort of been in these very significant fundraising positions ever since I've known you.
Yeah, I like to think of myself this way, Chris. I'm a coach or a mentor at heart. That's my calling. Now, I don't know that that's exactly what fundraising is about, but it's what drives me. And I think when I think of myself as a coach, it is to be someone who's bringing out the best in the people I work with. Now, the connection to fundraising then is to work with donors to help them realize their potential as philanthropists. And I feel there's a good connection there.
Yeah, that's great. Well, during this journey, you must have been guided supported by certain mentors. Who were those people that were really formative in your life, your professional life, and what made that relationship so significant or special?
Yeah, I'll mention a couple of names at the risk of not mentioning some others, and I think
Yeah.
they'll understand because there are many. Um, I have to mention the current CEO with whom I work. That's Marcia Mintz here at the Boys and Girls Club of the Bout. And I'm not just kissing up. She's fantastic, and she's been a great influence. I look also at a gentleman by the name of Dan Conway, and I can't wait till he hears this and sees this podcast to know I mentioned him. I met him in my time in California when you and I met.
Yep.
He is someone who exhibits kindness, um, conviction about values, and I try to learn from him. He is still a mentor of mine, I'm proud to say. And the other person I'd mentioned specifically as it relates to ethics is Joyce Mitchell Antoine, who was my predecessor as chair of this global ethics committee of AFP. She really uh, orchestrated a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last few years. So I look at her uh, fondly and respectfully as well.
It's wonderful. They will all appreciate being mentioned, no doubt. You mentioned coaching as part of your kind of philosophy or the thing that you maybe love to do most in the fundraising field or the leadership field. Do you have a particular philosophy around leadership or how you choose to lead or what might be the most important or some of the most important elements of your leadership?
It's a great question. I don't know that I want to elevate my thoughts to a philosophy. I'll call it an attitude.
Good.
And that was formed pretty early on. I'll give you a name that you might remember. Some of the older folks listening and watching might. The name of Zig Ziglar, who
Yep.
was pretty much known as a motivational coach and worked with a lot of salespeople. And I attended one of his presentations, and he told the group something that stuck with me, and I think it works as a fundraiser. And he said, "You can get almost anything you want in life by helping enough other people get what they want."
It's great.
That translates, I think, pretty almost directly to the work that we have as fundraisers. Help enough people reach their goals, and you'll reach your own.
Yeah, agreed.
So,
100%. That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. Um, and I think it's an important lesson for all of us to embrace in life, not just professionally, but personally, right? So thanks for bringing that forward.
sure.
All right, so enough about you. Let's talk about ethics now.
Let's do
Enough
it.
about you. Let's talk more about you and ethics. So in setting the stage, like how do you define ethical fundraising and why is it essential to articulate that definition in every organization?
Well, first you've got to look at, well, what do we think ethics is? Let's go to the root of it.
Okay.
And I'll start with that and just say ethics is knowing right from wrong. Let's start there. I think it goes to another level. It's doing the right thing when you understand what's right and wrong, and maybe even doing it when no one is looking.
Very good.
So it's not very different. I mean, it doesn't change much when you look at it as a fundraiser. Are we doing the right things? Are we doing it whether or not the eyes are on us? But I would say I think people are looking, and we need to be aware of that. So all of that carries through, I think.
Yeah, yeah. People are always looking. You might just not understand from where they are seeing you,
Mhm.
because oftentimes it's very hidden. But well said. I mean, I do love the point about doing what's right, even if no one's looking, or even if it's not going to advantage you, because it's right. So thank you.
Precisely.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that forward. And from your work with AFP's ethics committee, I'd be interested to know what some of those trends or recurring issues you see most often kind of coming to the surface?
Yeah, Chris, there's one that keeps coming up. So I don't even know if it's a trend. I would just say it's been there from the beginning.
Okay.
When the AFP first developed the Code of Ethical Standards, that was back in 1964.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
I knew that date. Like, no, I did not. 1964. So we're talking about a lot of decades that's been out there, and
Yes.
something that AFP pioneered, which it can feel very good about.
Well, the driver back then, and just like you, I remember it fondly, but
Right.
uh, the driver had to do with compensation issues in the
Okay.
fundraising field.
Okay.
Those have not left us. Those are still there. So is it a trend? I think it's a constant. Yeah, we have trends, and we can maybe talk about that as we go on. But I just want to point out that that is probably the first, foremost, top of mind issue whenever we're discussing ethics in the fundraising world. Are fundraisers compensated appropriately, um, adequately? I think you can include that. But it's been an issue since the beginning. Back when finders fees were first put on the table, and we
Okay.
obviously reject that as a form of compensation. And we'll talk more about that, I'm sure. But that's, when you think about trends, I'd say it's compensation leads the pack.
Yeah, leads the pack. And the question I probably received most frequently as a consultant or as frontline fundraisers in the profession is, so what kind of commission do you make
Hmm.
on your fundraising, right? And of course the answer is, uniquely in the nonprofit world, fundraisers do not work on commission, right?
Right.
Which is just so mind blowing to so many individuals, especially board members who have made their wealth from commission sales or commissions on development deals or whatever it might be. So it's hard for them to grasp the concept that there wouldn't be commissions in fundraising or in the nonprofit world for fundraisers. So
Well, sure, because the assumption there, you didn't say it, but it's there. The assumption is that fundraisers are the same as salespeople. If you believe that, then why, if it works in the for-profit world, and by golly, we hear people say uh, nonprofits should be more like a business. So you draw those thoughts together, and all of a sudden you've got fundraisers making commissions is the right way to go. Well, it isn't. And let's cut right to the point. Imagine me asking you for a gift. Well, I'll make it a manageable $10,000, Chris, because I know you've got it. And
do I?
and, and then at the same time, you learn I'm getting 1,000 of it because
Right,
I'm on a 10% commission scale.
right.
And are you not appalled by the thought that the charitable gift you're about to make is going right into my pocket?
Yeah, 10% sounds like a lot.
Well, 5% would still be appalling to you, I think.
Right. Well, you can't even get real estate agents to get paid 3% anymore, right? So those commissions are coming down too. But I get your point. No, that's a horrible kind of relationship to be in. And as a donor, I'd figure out a way to skirt around that commission issue if I knew it existed, which fortunately I don't have to. And so I'll be glad to give you that $10,000 someday.
There you go.
There you go. Well, how have the conversations about ethics evolved in the field, let's say over the past 10 years? So keep it more recent.
I think the question comes up about different technologies and how they impact our work. So, probably the hot topic, and I don't think it's a real topic, is artificial intelligence. Yes, it's part of our lives now. It's probably going to grow as part of our lives and our professions. Well, if it's a tool, and that's what we have to look at. All of these technological changes, they're just tools. And if we use them correctly, then we're likely not to create any ethical challenges for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, perhaps a fundraiser is using AI to compose an appeal letter. it's still their responsibility to review all the content, to make sure it is accurate, timely, and honors the organization that they're representing.
Yeah.
How different is that from when the internet became part of our lives? There were many folks feared that that was going to change everything about our world and specifically about our nonprofit organizations. The internet is a tool. And if you use it properly, use tools properly, you just never run afoul of ethical considerations.
Got it. No, that's helpful. There are so many gray areas that exist in this arena of fundraising, and I think there's always been tension for fundraisers between meeting goals, which every year seem to get more uh, incredibly large, especially if you're successful, because success begets more success. So you just keep getting bigger goals. But between those goals and staying true to values.
Mhm.
So how can leaders help teams navigate sort of those gray zones that can emerge between, someone's desire to meet their goals and yet being true to those values?
Well, it sort of speaks to just the way we live. If you do your best to eliminate the temptation to do the wrong thing, then you're helping your whole organization out. You know, so one of the things, and you might have been implying this, uh, fundraisers have goals. There are metrics. They should be measured. Their performance should be evaluated.
Yeah.
But when you put those measurements in place, you do run the risk that that those measurements conflict with what's best for the donor.
Right.
And I think you have to recognize that. You have to basically say, yeah, these are metrics we want to honor, but we also don't want to do it at the expense of the best interest of all the parties involved. So a good example would be, I like to use this one, that if you're in the plan giving round, for example, and you're talking to an elderly donor about how they can support the organization, but you're tempted because your goals are set up a certain way to propose a gift that is out of their capacity. It's not good for them. Maybe to transfer an asset that they might need or that they depend on for their own well-being. You see the temptations there to do that if all we're focused on is our own personal performance.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's almost this responsibility of fundraisers to behave like doctors to do no harm as well, right? I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen someone equate it to Hippocratic oath for a doctor, but I have seen many fundraisers be coached not to take advantage of their donors who they have relationships with, who are sort of trusted people in the lives of these donors. And you find so many fundraisers are so close to these donors that soon enough, these donors are asking them to be trustees of their estate,
Right.
right? And talk about a murky uh, ethical dilemma to be the representative of an organization and then to assume the responsibility of being a trustee for them or an executor for them or something, right? So I know that's a huge ethical dilemma for that happens quite frequently because people out there need to know that fundraisers um, are so good at developing relationships. It's just it's part of their DNA to become very close personal friends with their donors. But there has to be that line that you can't cross and things that you just can't do.
And the Code of Ethical Standards addresses everything you just referenced. So
Right. Good advertisement, and we want everyone to check that out. And a lot of people have never even heard of it, don't know that it exists. So why don't you go ahead and tell the audience where they can find it if they want to pick up a copy of it or download a copy of it or read it.
yeah, this is the easiest thing in the world. You can actually type Code of Ethical Standards Fundraising, and it'll take you right to the website of the Association of Fundraising Professionals, where you can find the now 4-page code, and that's it. And the beauty of it is it not only lists uh, the standards themselves, but provides an explanation, even definitions of some words that may not be obviously understood, such as stewardship. Uh, things I don't have it handy, but you get the point. It's a pretty
Right.
easy it's a pretty
Right.
easy read.
Yeah, good. So what are some of the decision-making tools, I don't know if you call them frameworks, that fundraisers can use when confronted with ethical uncertainty? I mean, I suppose they can go to um, the code and review that for any clarification. That's a good tool that I know you would recommend and suggest. But are there other decision-making tools that can be accessed?
Absolutely. I'm going to give you mine. I'm going to give you three of
Okay,
mine,
great.
and they're
Thank you.
pretty straightforward. Uh, the stomach test.
Okay.
Whatever you're doing, if it feels weird, if you're getting butterflies in your stomach, that doesn't mean you're doing something unethical, but it sure means you should question
Yep.
whether you're on firm ethical ground.
Yep.
The next one I like to call the grandmother test, and it speaks to what I referenced earlier. Some people think that means, what would your grandmother think of it? Well, I mean it a little differently. I think it means, how would you like it if a fundraiser was proposing this to your grandmother? Would you be okay with it? And then the third one is, I refer to it as the 60-minute test. And essentially that means, would you be willing to be interviewed on a Sunday evening CBS show defending your actions? And
Uh-huh.
again, that speaks to, are you confident enough that what you're doing is ethically sound, and you'd be willing to go before an audience, a nationwide audience, to explain yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I like those three tests that you can give yourself. Um, and then, you can go to the actual text of the code for further clarification. You can talk to um, someone who's been in the business for a while. I'm sure your committee has a way of reviewing questions, or certainly I know that you evaluate certain cases, whether they rise to the level of unethical behavior and need a recommendation or something like that. So there's all kinds of resources and tools. And I think on the AFP website as well, and it's appropriate to give them lots of credit because they invest so much time and energy in this. There are case studies, there are some training materials, there's all kinds of resources for fundraising leaders to share with their teammates or others in the organization that need to understand what it truly means to be ethical in the field of fundraising, right?
There's so many more resources now than there ever have been. And thank you for bringing that up. And yes, I'm very proud of the committee, the Global Ethics Committee, for the work they've done, especially in the past couple of years. We haven't mentioned it yet, but the code was also recently revised,
Okay.
and I think brought to a more it's more current. The language is clearer, I think. You mentioned there is a body that reviews ethical challenges. Sometimes it's an outright complaint that,
Mhm.
that a member of AFP, for example, has violated the code. And that might have been the way we always did things. And that's still out there. That's still something you can do. But we also have a group within our committee that answers ethical inquiries.
Great.
And I love that, because why do you want to jump right to a complaint? Maybe what you want to do is first find out if there's even an ethical concern.
Mhm.
And we get all sorts of questions. Some of them are rooted in ethical dilemma, and some are simply questions seeking more knowledge,
Right.
seeking your understanding of, is this scenario an ethical challenge or not? And believe me, that's been one of the most helpful services that we provide.
I'm sure it's the classic, hey, I'm asking for a friend. Uh, can you tell me, for my friend, can you tell me?
That's exactly.
Right. It's all good. It's all good. All right. Well, let's talk about aligning donor intent with institutional priorities as it relates to ethics. Are there best practices for creating that alignment between donor intent and institutional priorities?
I think everyone can choose their path. What I have chosen, I go back to lessons taught to me by Jim Lloyd. You recall he's written some great work about fundraising, and he encourages the use of what's called the appreciative inquiry. So the short version of that, there's a lot of deep study you can do on this, but the short version of it is to ask questions, to keep asking questions to of your donors, to find out what it is that is most important to them. And the more you learn from that, the more you can align their needs with the need of your organization or the needs of your organization. It's a beautiful process because it it it, it brings connectivity, it builds relationships, it does all the things that we hope it would do to not only serve the donor, but to serve the organization. And to do it in a way that's honest and transparent. So I'd say, for the listeners and viewers, think about what an appreciative inquiry would be like if you could do that with your donor base.
Yeah.
Best
Yeah. That's great. That's wonderful. And what about the gifts that could create reputational or mission alignment concerns? How should organization approach those kinds of gifts?
Well, I'll speak generally, not just for my organization. I've been in different places where the attitudes might be a little different. Let me talk about that.
Sure.
Um, I think most of the time, when you're talking about the reputation of an organization and accepting a gift, it's more of a marketing thing. Think about how does it look? Let me give you an example. How would most people feel if the Mothers Against Drunk Driving accepted a corporate contribution from an alcohol company?
Right.
I think we all kind of bristle at the thought.
Right.
So that's one extreme for him. And I honestly don't know if they have a policy about that, but it's a question you would ask. Should the Lung Association accept gifts from tobacco companies? Those sort of things.
Right.
But at the same time, and I'm probably going to misquote Mother Teresa, but she did, in fact, I mean, we know this, accept contributions from folks who were known to be lawbreakers. Um, and enough said about that. But her attitude toward it was that there was nothing she could do about how the funds got to those hands, but that she could do a great deal with it. And she did. I'm not in the habit of debating a saint. So I sort of pause there and say, I've got to think about that. And that's why I think ultimately it comes down to what are the values of an organization? What is the impact on potentially on their reputation if they accept certain gifts from certain sources?
Yeah. Good. Yeah. I think that's so important. Such a good perspective to have. What about the need for transparency? How does that come into play when we're talking about fundraising and ethics?
It sort of answers itself if you think about it. First of all, I think it's one of the most important characteristics of a good ethical fundraising program.
Okay.
Think of it this way: an alarm should go off if you feel like you're not being transparent. If you ever feel like you're hiding something, then maybe that's the stomach test kicking in. Well, why are we doing this? Why are we not being transparent? Answer that question before you go anywhere. So transparency's got to be at the front of ethical actions.
Yeah. Okay. And it seems to fit into the right kind of culture. So when you have transparency, when you're asking the right questions, when you um, factor donor intent into the decision making, and you think about what's right for the donors. So what does it take to create that kind of culture where ethics is a part of everyday fundraising practice rather than just something that is sort of a checklist item for compliance purposes. What is that? How do you?
Yeah, there's no document I can point you to, but there's some thoughts I can share with you.
Yeah.
The culture starts with the leadership.
Yeah.
Leadership that's convicted about ethical behavior. That's step one. I'll give you a couple of tools that I would suggest should be in the conversation directly. One would be the code itself. I mean, we already addressed the code of ethical standards should be something that, especially the fundraisers in an organization, they get it, they understand it, they sign on to it. Another document that's very easily accessible, Google this if you can, the Donor Bill of Rights,
Right.
which, just the sound of it should be, oh yeah, I want to know more about that. The Donor Bill of Rights, what should donors be entitled to? And here's the beauty of the Donor Bill of Rights. It's not owned by any organization. It's public, it's available. And all an organization needs to do is say, we subscribe and embrace the Donor Bill of Rights and share that with your donors. And when they look at that and they say, wow, I'm working with an institution that believes I have rights, and look how clear they are. And it's clarity about things like, were my funds used the way they were intended? Did I get proper acknowledgement? And I won't recite the whole thing, but
Sure.
it's very long and it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it really is.
The third thing I would say that it's part of maybe the management would be have a gift acceptance strategy or gift acceptance policy and ways in which to implement it. Because you may set a policy, but then you get to a question you can't answer easily. So you have a process to determine if a gift can be accepted under that policy.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Those are three great resources and tools. And obviously, it's the senior leadership's responsibility to make some of those things available, especially the gift acceptance policies. But what else can senior leaders do, or should senior leaders do to reinforce ethical standards, ethical fundraising standards?
Well, you would think with all these tools it would be easy. I think there's a lost art these days, Chris, and that's the art of critical thinking. The willingness to confront a challenge at the beginning and to be open to differing opinions. It doesn't mean you have to accept all the differing opinions, but you need to be able to listen, to understand, and recognize that there may be different viewpoints. And that's when we get into the gray areas, that's critical. There are times when the right thing to do is not obvious. So you have to, under leadership, you have to engage those topics directly and be honest, open, transparent. You mentioned that already, and be willing to understand there are different viewpoints. That's it.
Doesn't sound too hard. Come on.
Yeah, it's easy to say, not necessarily easy to do.
Yeah, no, and what makes it complicated are some of today's realities, whether it's AI, as you mentioned, the influence of existing donors, those pressures, social media, all those. Do you see those things reshaping the ethical landscape or applying pressure to the ethical landscape, or are they making it easier to be ethical?
Being ethical should not be such a struggle.
Maybe you shouldn't be in this industry if you have those sorts of issues or temptations or whatever the right word is, because you're right, it shouldn't be that difficult.
Yeah, totally. And I think if we're guided by transparency, you think about what makes an organization, what would make you call them ethical? How would you recognize that it's in their DNA, so to speak? I think connect your ethical decision making to things that you probably already have. You have a mission statement. Many organizations have value statements. They're all connected. So when you're looking at a situation, you can simply ask, is this consistent with our values?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I say it shouldn't be that hard. Yeah. And it is easier to talk about in the abstract. It's when you have a situation in front of you that it becomes a challenge.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And I suppose to the extent that you have people that you can talk to about these events that happen, that question, whether you should do one thing or another based on the ethical framework that exists, is helpful too. It's not just open up a book or type into ChatGPT, how you should respond to a particular circumstance, but is there another individual that you can go to that's in your network, that's a mentor or a colleague that you trust, right? So that you can um, sort of expose it to light as well. So it's sort of not just this thing that you're hiding from people and trying to keep secret as well. Which I think is often the case.
Yeah, I agree.
What about early career fundraisers? Like, what advice would you give them to help them protect their integrity uh, and influence as they advance in their careers?
Well, I mentioned one of the early tests is the stomach test, but I'd connect that to just trust your gut. Uh, you know, maybe younger and early career fundraisers come with an idealistic viewpoint of what they're getting into, and then they get a little uneasy when they see the environment around them. That's perfectly fine. Um, but trust your gut, explore further. Um, and I'd ask, and I think some young people, some new in the career do this. Create your own values statement. What are the things that matter to you? And are you in an organization that is complementary to your values?
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's
That's
good.
a great place to start. And so it may not be the thing you're most passionate about, but as long as there's no conflict between your values and the values of the organization you're serving, you're probably on the right path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Well, what's the role of associations like AFP um, in continuing to lead and evolve that conversation and that awareness and that knowledge on ethics in the coming years?
At the risk of repeating myself, I am super proud of the Global Ethics Committee of AFP,
Yep.
especially over the last couple of years. Yes, we updated the code of standards. We've created channels, as I mentioned, for individuals to even present inquiries. We have an education committee whose purpose is to get the word out through all means possible. That could be publications such as Advancing Philanthropy, Chronicle of Philanthropy, others of that type. Participating in podcasts might be a good idea. I should think about that. Uh, uh, Writing articles, going to conferences, and getting out to different communities. AFP chapters are a great vehicle, but there's many other groups that we can speak to and make sure that they're aware of ethical concerns in our space.
Yeah. I bet you could get a lot of listeners to listen to a podcast that reveals stories from the trenches, the all sort of identifiable markers have been removed to protect the innocent and all of that stuff, right? But I'm sure you hear some fantastical stories of bad behavior, and not that it's significant out there. I mean, I think the one thing people should really know is that these are outlier situations. The vast majority of fundraisers, and there are tens of thousands of fundraisers in the U.S. alone, operate at just such an incredibly high level of integrity and ethics. So I'm proud of that. I mean, I think if there's one thing that we can be proud of as a nonprofit sector is the level of integrity that exists from staff. Um, I think if you run into problems, it's because of unscrupulous donors, and sometimes others that are volunteers that are trying to take advantage of the system. It's often not actually the staff.
Yeah, I think that's the reality is we are drawn to awareness of the violations and we're not paying attention to all the great stuff that's going on. You
Yeah.
know, that's the risk. That's just part of our human condition.
Yeah.
We
Well,
look at perceptions.
and that's why AFP hasn't suggested the podcast angle, because you're not trying to bring attention to the challenges that exist in fundraising or the fantastical stories like you would with American Greed or something like that, which is so popularized. You're actually trying to make people aware, but not giving it oxygen as an excuse for people to try their luck.
No, and Chris, I do workshops all the time on this topic, and included in the workshops that I present are real life scenarios, but they're not all bad behavior. They are typically situations where the answer is not clear, and
Good,
the
good. Thank you.
nuanced situation leads to the right behavior. And sometimes it's crystal clear once you've gotten rid of all the nuance and you've established the reality. But most of the time, they're called a dilemma for a reason because it's not obvious what the right or wrong thing is. It's not something like embezzlement or any of those horrible things that draw the news media's attention.
Right, right, exactly. Well, last but not least, as we wrap up the topic of ethics and fundraising here, I'd love it if you could, even if, at the risk of repeating yourself, leave listeners with one guiding principle to help them stay grounded when ethical challenges arise. And what would that guiding principle be from your perspective?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm exactly repeating myself, but I would say this. Remember that you're not in this alone. You have, trust your gut. I mentioned that. Trust that there are guidelines that exist that can help you to make the right decision. Trust your colleagues in this space to help you navigate ethical challenges. Uh, that's the road to stay on.
That's awesome. That's perfect. And thank you for highlighting a particular area of fundraising that doesn't get enough attention, both for the fact that so many fundraisers really have ethics as a core value, guiding them in their daily profession, but also because we want people to know, as you said, that they're not alone, that there are resources, there are tools, and that they should be striving to operate at a level where there aren't challenges to ethical behavior, that it should be easy. And hopefully this conversation has been of great assistance to those fundraisers out there who need a reminder here and there about things, or are new enough that they're needing to be exposed to the realities of fundraising, and the fact that there is such incredibly strong ethical behavior in the nonprofit fundraising field. So, John, thank you for being such a force for good. Thank you also for being such a great teacher and mentor to so many. We're lucky to have people like you in our industry, that's for sure.
Well, Chris, thank you. And thanks to the Fulcrum Group for all you're doing to ensure that we honor professional ethical standards in our work.
Yeah, well, thanks, John. And speaking of Fulcrum, I was going to mention too that we actually have a code of ethics, if you will, a code of behavior for nonprofit leaders. So it's not specific to fundraising, but it is a code for nonprofit leaders to abide by. And I think it's really powerful and marries really well with the code of ethics that AFP has developed. So would encourage everyone to check that out if they have time. But unfortunately, that concludes our conversation today. But if you like what you're hearing, if you like what we're putting out, please like and subscribe to this podcast, Mastering Fundraising. But also check out our other two podcasts. One is called Lead for Good, and the other is The Nonprofit Edge. All of them interview extraordinary leaders in the nonprofit sector and explore their leadership journey, and then kind of dig into some really meaningful topic. You'll enjoy all of them, so check them out. Again, take care, and thank you again for joining. We'll see you all very soon.
Thank you for joining this episode of Mastering Fundraising. We hope the conversation was helpful and invite you to like and subscribe to this podcast for more conversations with extraordinary nonprofit and fundraising leaders. To learn more about Fulcrum Nonprofit Leadership, please visit us on the web at fulcrumleader.com. To learn more about the 5-Tool Fundraiser, please visit us at 5toolfundraiser.com. We want to hear from you. Please share your thoughts and ideas with us at hello@fulcrumleader.com. Thank you for the important work you do to make our world stronger. We look forward to welcoming you back during a future podcast. In the meantime, take care and be well.